Welcome to the RevRoom. I'm your host, Rachel Bryant. Join me each episode as we discuss the strategies of top marketing practitioners, uncovering the tactics that transform ideas into revenue. Whether you're a seasoned marketer or an aspiring leader, the RevRoom is your go-to source for actionable advice and industry trends. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and enjoy this episode. Hey everybody, welcome to the RevRoom, where today we're tackling a topic that's giving B2B marketers everywhere a collective headache: the campaign planning crisis. Let's be honest, we've all been there. You drop $50,000 on a slick research report, push it out for a hot minute, then move on to the next shiny content piece while your ROI quietly weeps in the corner. It's the B2B equivalent of buying designer shoes that hurt too much to actually wear. At Inverta, we've seen this movie before, and spoiler alert, it doesn't end with champagne in pipeline. That's why I'm thrilled to chat with Kelly Santos from Intelex, who's transformed her team by ditching the content as a campaign approach for something that actually works. Kelly's going to share how strategic campaign planning became the foundation her team needed, proving you can't build a marketing mansion on quicksand, no matter how pretty your blueprints are. So let's dive into what happens when marketing teams stop playing whack-a-mole with content and start building campaigns that actually convert. Well, welcome everybody back to the Rev Room. We're really excited about today's guest. Kelly Santos is with us today, and we're going to talk campaign planning, which is very exciting. Here at Inverta, we love helping our clients sort of move away from content as a campaign to more strategic campaign planning. And Kelly's going to tell us all about how they went about doing that. So let's just jump in. Kelly, will you welcome, by the way, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel. Great to be here. Yes, my name is Kelly Santos. I currently oversee lifecycle marketing and business development at Intelex, which is a health and safety software company. So in this role, I am really responsible for demand gen, so acquiring new customers, all the way through retention and advocacy. So it's really exciting to see everyone through the entire life cycle, and then also business development. So making sure that any initial conversations we have with folks are really valuable from truly start to finish, and that we create ultimately at the end these raving fans for Intelex, but also that we make sure we get people home safely to their families at night. That's our number one mission, and that's our goal.
I love that. Well, you have a big job. So I'm sure in your big job, you come every morning with a mug full of coffee.
Sure.
And so I know you've brought your favorite mug. So I'll share mine that I have today. I have told the audience before I'm running out of mugs in my cabinet.
You
And
must
I'm also
be.
forgetting which ones I've shared. So yes. But I have my Monday, because we're shooting on Monday morning here. So it's my Hustle Juice mug. I think I've
we
shown
need
this
that.
one before, but
Wow.
it's Monday morning and I need some Hustle Juice to get me going and rolling this morning after the time change. As we were talking about, it definitely makes us drag a little bit. So Kelly, tell us about the mug that you brought.
You bet. Yeah, my hustle juice comes later in the day. I get that later.
Okay.
So I brought my Stitch mug. So it says Ohana. Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind. But really, what I like about not just Stitch, but Disney in general is from a business perspective. Yes, we're big Disney fans. We love Disney. We love going to the parks. We love the movies. But they're really interesting to follow from a business perspective and what they do from a customer experience standpoint. We've gone so many times to Disney, and a lot of times my kids who are 9 and 11 almost don't even mention the rides. They mention the experiences with the cast members, which I think is really interesting. So we really enjoy that. I love to read different things about Disney, Bob Iger, their different dynamic pricing. It's always changing. And I think that's really cool because they're also always experimenting with different things. And it's not always with rave reviews at the end either. They listen to their customers and they change things as well. So I just think from a business standpoint, it is a super cool model and a lot to learn from Disney. And also Stitch is so ugly, he's cute. So it's hard not to be happy when you're drinking out of a Stitch mug.
And then the family I mean, you've got it all in one mug, so I love that. I've said this before, but we've had several people bring in Disney-related mugs, very similar to the one you have that they bought in park or something. So lots of Disney fans out there. And what I really love about being in in marketing specifically is you do have real life examples of companies doing great stuff all the time or not so great stuff that you get to learn
Yeah.
from. And, of course, we see the big corporate brands like the Disneys and things like that who do sort of splashy stuff, the Super Bowl ads, all that sort of stuff. But I also like to just, to your point, like you get to follow them and like see what they're doing that's really strategically helping them grow their business and
Right.
try to just learn from those things. I also like to point out some things. I'm like, well, that's marketing,
Yeah.
guys. And to my kids, sometimes they're like, okay, mom, I
Yes.
get the eye roll and whatnot from
Yes.
the teenagers.
Same here.
So that's great. Well, speaking of marketing, let's jump into what we came to talk about today, Kelly,
Yeah.
and that is campaign planning. And um, let's start at the before the beginning, I suppose. And like, what really triggered you and your team to go, we need something different. We need to put in a more sort of strategic framework for our campaigns.
Absolutely. So, like you said, when you opened up, we pushed out content that we viewed as a campaign. So, we would create this really great piece of content. It could be a piece of research, it could be a white paper, and we would wrap different activities around that specific piece of content. And that it didn't not work for us. It worked to an extent, but we realized over time as we would push out this piece of content and then we'd move on to the next thing and we wouldn't really go back and optimize or look at it. And so after a while, it started to feel a little bit exhausting to continually push out content, but then not really go back and revisit it. And so that's what caused us to pause and say, are we actually approaching this in the most helpful way for our prospects? Are they getting what they need? Are they getting the value out of what we're creating? Are we differentiating ourselves with our message? Or are we just pushing out content that,
Yeah.
helpful, but isn't really driving our mission and isn't really assisting customers through their journey. So we didn't really know where customers were in their journey. We didn't know if they wanted more awareness content or bottom of funnel decision-making content. We just kind of pushed it out and spray and pray and see what we got into our net. And so that's what really prompted us to say, ooh, maybe we could do this a little bit smarter and actually create a true campaign with a singular message, all of these different activities underneath it, and just do it in a different way, in a true campaign fashion. I think sometimes we get so busy in what we're doing is that we're doing a lot of activities and it felt really good and we were,
Mhm.
checking things off the list, but we were able to sit back and say, okay, is this the best use of our time? And are we truly helping our customers or prospective customers with the different content that we're pushing out? So it was a good moment for us to step back and really think about what we wanted to do when it came to campaign planning and what we needed to do differently for the campaign, but also as a team.
Mhm. I think you have a lot of pain points that you are
Yeah.
experiencing that. Man, I talk to so many people and listen to a lot of other podcasts or follow on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Like so many people struggle with this problem and it really centers around that. And I've led teams right through this as well as like all the content as a campaign
Mhm.
sort of marketing. But to your point, like I don't know if it's a badge of honor we wear as marketers or what it really ends up becoming, but that badge of busyness,
Mhm.
really we get wrapped up around. And I think some of that comes from like the MQL engine, right?
For
Like
sure.
having to
Yeah.
just drive MQLs constantly. And um, our friend Carrie Cunningham calls it the MQL industrial complex, right? And all of those things that sort of center around that. But at the end of the day, we're really just churning and churning and churning. It's creating burnout for people.
Yeah.
It's also maybe not the best for our prospects and customers and meeting them where they're at in their journey. And I think like it's really kind of old school, right? The way we're looking at it. And really try to encourage people to think bigger about what they're doing. So when you sort of realize this and went, man, we need to do something different. What kind of steps did you take? What did you end up doing? And like what brought Inverta into the mix to help you with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing that was difficult too is that we were hitting our goals. So it wasn't that
Mm,
we were seeing MQLs come in. We had our pipeline number that we were targeting. So we were doing okay. So when you think of just the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
that's right.
It was
Hmm.
tough for us to say, well, can we actually, it was more in the spirit of continuous improvement than this is broken and we need to fix it. So I think
Mm-hmm.
going in with that mindset definitely helped for the team to feel motivated to come together and work on something. This is just the next evolution of our campaign planning process. It's not broken. So I think that was very motivating for the team. So We worked with Inverta and the team to really go through a campaign planning process and truly define across the entire team, really co-create this campaign plan together. How are we actually going to plan a campaign? We needed to come together and figure that out because we also have embarked on account-based everything, account-based marketing. And so we knew that in order to do that really well, we had to set the foundation from a campaign standpoint first. If we didn't know how to put together a campaign, we were not going to be successful at putting together an ABM campaign. So one of the things that we did is we knew we had to have all of these different functions come together and hold each other accountable on where is the handoff, who's managing what, and really truly define what our RACI is. That was probably one of our biggest hindrances in the past, and why we were so content driven is because we were primarily the demand gen team churning out all of these different pieces of content, but we knew we needed inputs from other teams. And we just didn't have the formality of a RACI to say, okay, you now need to give us this, and you now need to give us that, and now here's the handoff. So defining the RACI was vital in what we were doing. So that process was, met with the Inverta team. We worked with Danielle, who walked us through an entire RACI, but it wasn't so prescriptive that the team didn't feel like they were also creating it together. They had a voice in everything. So we had benchmark best practices, say that 3 times fast,
Yeah.
from Inverta that said, this is typically what we recommend, but does it work for your organization? Every org is different. Every team is looked differently. So that was really important. And the team had their voice into, well, I think it makes sense if so-and-so's team does X and here's the handoff or what have you. So that was really important. That was truly the first critical step in making sure we could actually pull together a campaign, is really put together that RACI. From there, we went through all the different steps that we would need to take. So when it comes to the value prop, the messaging house, putting together different pieces of different offers, high value offers, making sure we knew the buyer's journey, making sure we had the right content to map to it. So all of these checkpoints were part of that campaign planning process document. And so now we live and die by this document is from start to finish. Okay, open it up. What are the objectives? What are the goals, the KPIs that we're trying to hit? That will define the type of campaign that we're really looking for. Then we'll go all the way through to the channel execution and activation to make sure we're meeting these folks where they're active within different marketing channels.
Yeah. I want to just go back and talk about the RACI a little bit, because I've done several RACI exercises with different clients in my few years here at Inverta. And to your point, I think it's important to remember, like, not every company is created equal. Some people, field marketing has a bigger or smaller role in some organizations, right? Sometimes it's just an event, execution team, and others there's one-to-one ABM happening. And like, how do those sorts of things connect to each other? Were there some pieces in there where you had some challenging discussions about who owns what, and maybe not challenging, but just a little bit more discussion about, okay, how are we going to do this? Who's going to own this? And well, I've always done this in the past, or our team has always owned this. And like, how did you build those collaborations?
Say it was predominantly when it came to some of the channel activation. So typically in the past, the way our team is set up is we have regional directors for North America and for EMEA. And so those folks would really be responsible for defining the channel that we would use to reach our prospects. Now, when we were looking at the RACI, we said, okay, we still want those people to activate and help inform what those channels are. But the campaigns director should also be saying, this is the model of the campaign, or this is the framework. Here's what we're trying to achieve. We think we can, and make it more of a conversation. Here's what we think in terms of channels. Regional directors, what do you think? Are these the best channels that we should use to go after these folks? So it was more of a conversation than here's a piece of content. Now run with it and do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
And so then the regions would go off and, maybe book an e-blast or maybe do some kind of sponsored post, whatever it would be. It sounds really cliche. It broke down those silos. It forced conversations, and it allows us now to have a conversation, but also say, well, is that the best way to do it? Or, oh, I think we should explore with this type of channel. And really, that's been one of the most beneficial byproducts of this whole exercise is now you have a team that used to work in silos. threw things over the fence, which was fine and it
Yes.
worked. Now we're having conversations, but people feel like they're part of this thing together. And I think that's one of the best parts is we're all marching towards the same goal. And every team within marketing is touching this campaign in some form or fashion too, which has been really rewarding, I think, for everyone.
That's awesome. I think you said it. It is cliche, but not in a negative way. I think it's just so many people feel that. Like there are so many places where I need to break it down. These so many leaders going, I need to break down these silos. I just don't know how. And I think what you've outlined is really helpful in bringing everybody together, documenting what everybody's role is supposed to be, and the importance of those roles. Right? No, like what I found is in some places we're like, well, this is my channel and I should decide how it gets used, but that's not really how it works at the end anyways. You're not doing that today, even though you think you are, right? Somebody is still like, you know, driving that discussion and driving those decision making. So anyways, I digress, but I agree though. I think it's breaking down those silos is really important.
For
So tell me a little bit about how you went from content as a campaign to what's a campaign now today at Intelex?
Yeah, a campaign now is really a theme and a message that we want to use in market to rally prospects and or customers around a challenge that they have, and then of course positioning Intelex as the solution for that challenge.
Mhm.
So when we were planning for 2025, we wanted, we came with a bunch of different ideas. We went through the process, so we tested it just to make sure, okay, in theory, we all sat down and said, this looks good, but in practice, does it actually make sense? So we tested that planning process really toward the end of 2024 for a 2025 campaign launch. And we went through all the individual steps, and there were some things that we tweaked over time to say, well, this doesn't actually make sense in how we envisioned it would work. So let's adjust the RACI, or let's maybe even skip this step. We don't need that one. So that was really helpful. So now we have a campaign that we're using to target prospects. We are also now going to use that same campaign planning framework for any kind of advocacy or retention campaigns. So it will
Yeah.
span that whole life cycle as well. So we're really excited. We're optimizing our campaign that we have in market. We we all talk about what are the things that we can do differently. Are we hitting our metrics? We are also using demand base too as a platform to help with some of our campaigns. So that was new as well. Is okay, we have this campaign. We want to make sure it's integrated. That was one of the big parts too, is are all of these channels actually integrated? So we bring someone
Mhm.
in, we acquire a new contact. Are we nurturing them? Bringing them down the funnel and nurturing them over time. And so making sure that we were truly doing that and we were all sharing in that responsibility to bring these folks in and nurture them down the funnel.
Yeah, that's great. Um, how have you been able to, um, build but, you talked a little bit about bringing them by the buyer's journey, but can you dig into that a little bit more? Like, what does that look like, beyond just, like, email drips or something like that? Are you, like, integrating multiple channels? How are you doing that as you acquire contacts into your, database and start to nurture them towards a sales conversation?
Yeah, great question. We are really experimenting a lot with intent. So we are looking
Mm,
into demand base to see of our target accounts, which ones are showing intent, which is signaling where they might be within their journey, what kind of content pieces they're engaging with. And so that's really how we're feeding different lists, for instance, to third parties, or a content syndication that's also using intent. And so based on if they're showing any intent, if they're showing a lot, that's when we'll serve them different pieces of content. We're also experimenting now too with G2 and different software review sites to pull intent data from them to
mhm,
say, okay, these people are much more in the decision or consideration stages. So
mhm,
we should be pointing them to this piece of content. So we will pull folks in depending on if they're a known contact. We will nurture them accordingly. So if they have a higher score, we'll perhaps serve them up more middle of funnel content. Just depends on really where they are and if they're in our database at all. So a lot of experimentation with intent. It is something that we will continue to refine over time, is just what does this mean? What are the signals? It's a never ending process, I think, with intent. So
yeah.
it's been really interesting to see some of the early learnings from that experiment as well.
Yeah, That's great. What are some of the, as you've started to implement this process, what are some of the challenges that you face? Some of the maybe headwinds or some of the hiccups or just some of the things the team has gone, hey, help here.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things along the
Ah.
way.
When with campaign planning, we are much more organized. And like I said, we rally around kind of a shared goal. Where it's still very heavy is definitely the content. I mean,
Mm,
it's before with a campaign, it was maybe one piece of content and a nurture track. Now it's content for two different personas, different stages of the buyer's journey. Yes,
yes.
we still nurture them, but it is almost exponentially increased the amount of content that we need to produce. So while we are away from content as a campaign, we are still very, very heavily reliant on content in general. So I think that's been probably it wasn't necessarily a point of contention, but more of just, oh, there's a
Mm,
lot to do here. And I
of
think that's
course.
one of the outputs of just an integrated campaign is, well, you have this whole framework. Okay, you acquire different folks. Well, where are they in the journey? Okay, piece of content. And it's a lot. So that's been
Yeah.
probably the biggest part is just the content overall.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not surprising. We see that a lot with some of our other clients at Invert as we're building out a campaign or, working with them on that buyer's journey is, yeah, there's a lot of top of funnel type of
Yeah.
content, thought leadership, acquisition stuff. And then of course, always lots of sales enablement content, right? Like there's always product sheets or
Yeah.
um, case studies, things like that, for the sales team to share. It's that sort of middle of the road stuff when somebody's knows you, understands they have an issue, but they're not in the buying process yet. Like, they're not
Right.
ready to talk to a sales
Yeah.
rep or whatever. Like, how do you keep them informed? How do you keep them engaged? Keep your brand sort of front and center of
Absolutely.
them along that journey, right?
Yeah.
Especially if like either a new category or you're, maybe not, you're not a top one or two of the brands in your space or
Right.
something like that. Those are the big areas where we see that challenge. What are some of the things you guys have done there to help with that?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge for us is definitely, yeah, it's like these folks are teetering on the edge of they might know they have a pain, but they don't really know how to solve it. It might not always be pointing
Yes.
to software, and you also don't want to blatantly say, "Hey, it's software," because the software isn't solving the pain for them. It's the value
Yep.
that the software brings. Maybe it helps them get better insights from analytics or whatever it may be. And so that's really the message that we want to go out to market with is not, hey, Intellect software, you should pick us. It's, well, here's what you
Mhm.
can do with the safety management system and what it's able to provide you and make your lives so much easier. So it's kind of that soft messaging that we need to create. We have also found now we are looking at when it comes to ABM, very much industry focused. So when we were
Mm.
talking about content earlier, you take that content now, you also add an industry focused lens. But for us in the industries that we serve, they're very specific regulations. For instance, if it's in oil and gas, it's very specific in terms of regulation, especially if it's North America versus other parts of the world. So that's also when you increase some of that content. So it's been it's definitely been an interesting time to figure out, okay, how do we scale some of this content? How can we leverage AI
Yeah.
tools? How can we leverage different things at our disposal to really take advantage of being able to scale and reach our prospects as quickly as we can?
Yeah. Okay, Kelly, let me ask you a little bit about Inverta's role here. We don't talk a lot about how exactly we jump in here, but when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that having a third party presence through this process was really helpful for you and the team. Can you talk a little bit about that and like why you would recommend somebody potentially bringing in somebody like Inverta? We'd love to have Inverta there, but, like, something like that in if they're recognizing some of the challenges you were facing to help them get through that.
Absolutely. A third party, someone who an agency that has done this multiple times with clients like us or clients that are different. It provides a really different unbiased perspective that I think was really helpful. So having someone come in and say, "Hey, here's what we see." And so Inverta came in and they really looked at and took the time to understand our business first talked to, I think probably, gosh, 20, maybe 25 different people across sales, across marketing. I mean, it really ran the entire gamut of just different folks and different perspectives. But to really absorb and say, okay, here's where I see challenges. Kelly, can you validate this or can you refute this? And so we Inverta went through and really just combed through and tried to get the whole story. Then we validated or refuted, yes, this is correct. Yes, you're understanding that correctly. And so that was really a lot of the input into some of the campaign planning is you guys did your due diligence. Like you knew exactly what was going on in our business, in our day to day, what our problems were. You really thought to understand us, and that was really really vitally important. It wasn't like you just jumped in and said, "Hey, here's how we've done it before. It'd be great if you
Yeah.
did this too." And so I think people are more receptive to that type of conversation. Is we think we know you, and now here's how we can help you. And so I think that was really important for the team. And like I said, we didn't come into this campaign planning process saying we're broken, our team's broken. It was actually working really well. It was more of an evolution. And so I think the team was really excited to say, oh, we can actually get better. We can get more efficient. This is in the spirit of continuous improvement. And so that coupled with, oh, and Inverta took the time to really listen to my pain point and my
Mm.
role in part of this process to understand where I had trouble was vitally important because everyone felt heard. And then they were also able to co-create it together and still feel heard throughout the process. So we
Yeah.
didn't seek to come together even closer as a team. It was just an output of that, which I think was really, really nice. So that was really the beginning stages of the campaign planning. And then, we went through RACI, we went through kind of all of the different components. I would say it probably took, with schedules and stuff, it probably took about 8 weeks total to really go through and set everything up. We worked within Lucid. We were able to do different charts and different workflows to really see where some of the bottlenecks are. And then you were
Mhm.
able to pressure test it and put it into motion and say, okay, does this actually work? And so it was really a great process. And I think having Inverta there to facilitate, hold our hands, ask some of the tough questions like, are you sure that this works? Or how can we do this better? Where is the risk? Just it provided a different layer of perspective that I think was really helpful.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And you got one of the best. Danielle's amazing.
Yes, he's great.
We love hearing
Yeah.
her. Yeah, she's awesome. In fact, I actually worked with Danielle as I was a client before I joined Inverta as well, and she and some others helped us walk through that same process of campaign
Awesome.
planning, and
Yeah.
I just know the impact it had on our team as well. So yeah, I think that's really good advice for people. I think sometimes, we try to as marketers and leaders of an organization, say, I can do this. Like, you almost like sometimes leaders are especially newer leaders, but sometimes leaders are sort of like, I don't want to, you almost get in your like bubble and I can do this. I can make my team change. But being able to step outside, hey, I need help. And you can't scale yourself all the time either, and so you do need sometimes that help and that third party. What I always find is when I'm working with clients, like, emotionally invested in their success because that's how I work, it's how I function, I want that connection with them, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not emotionally invested in the organization, meaning how do I say that? Right. I don't have the relationships with so I'm conscious of that. So I don't want to say or do something that hurts that for my customer, but also like I can say the really reals to them and here's what I see and I think we can help you fix it. Those sorts of things. It's because I don't have that sort of maybe I don't know how I'm not saying it right the
Yeah,
way I
I know what
really
you're
want to, but
saying.
like the
Yeah.
emotional
Yes.
connection's not there of like I have to show up in front of these people every day. Like, I'm gonna be gone in probably 10
Yeah.
weeks or,
Yeah.
hopefully we have a longer relationship, but you're able to it's like a I don't know, it's like when you're a parent, sometimes you just have to bring the truth to
Yes.
light and you're
For
just like,
sure.
"I'm sorry. I know this is not
Yeah.
gonna, like, come across the best for you, but it is what it is," and, like,
100%.
then you move on and you've got,
Yeah.
like, really good positive things happening.
Totally.
Um, how does, um How does the campaign planning process now help you with your reporting and like tell us a little bit about maybe some of the success you're seeing in the performance of your campaigns and how that's helped your teams or feel empowered through their activities?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to talk just one quickly one thing quickly about what you just mentioned too is the change management aspect is so
Mm.
huge. We tend to overlook that aspect. And I think that was part of also the success is we took the time to invest in the change management across the team too. And so
Oh,
just,
that's great.
kind of my one piece of advice is folks, don't overlook that. And I tend to do that too, is like, I like change. And so I just assume, well, everyone else likes change and change means growth. And that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really scary for most of the world and just investing
Yes.
in that. So that was also a learning for me is, ooh, okay, that maybe took a little bit longer than I would ultimately want it to be. But now the process is sticking. People are on board. So it was well worth it. So it was a lesson for us.
That's That's a really great comment, Kelly. And before you go
Yeah.
on to sort of like the output and like how things are looking, can you talk a little bit? You said that took a little longer than you thought. But tell me about that. Like, what was your expectation and like how long did it take that for your team?
Yeah. My expectation is, well, this just makes sense. So let's just implement the framework and
Yep.
we're done. Right. So, I mean, I probably thought, all right, it'll take a month. We'll put this framework together. We'll all be good and we'll move forward. We had a lot of conversations and they weren't contentious. They were just people trying to understand the change in the process.
Mm-hmm.
For me, and this happens too, like even in ABM, like it makes sense in my head and it makes sense of why we need to do this. But for folks in general, you need to show the connection between why we're doing it, their role, the purpose, and just the overall
Mm-hmm.
goal of the company, and then who we're trying to help at the end of the day. And so there's a lot more driving that connection to help them come on board and support the change and be a part of it. So definitely a big lesson. Same thing with ABM. It's not really a new concept in theory to us, but it's it's a big initiative and it's a lot of work for different
Yes.
folks. And so I think also now we have different stakeholders. We have sales involved. And so making sure that they understand the expectations of them and what's required. And so that's another thing too, is I would say Inverta, kind of when you talk about like that parent coming in, it was very clear. There was one slide, I can picture it, and it said like the responsibilities, sales, marketing, and there was a little slider and it would say which one. That putting that in front of
Mm-hmm.
sales is very, very powerful to say, well, yes, we want to do this. We agree it's a good idea. Here's actually what
Yep.
each team is going to need to do in terms of lift. And I think that was just
Yes.
okay, nod your head yes or shake your head no if you're on board or not. And so that was a great part of the change management, I think, is just making sure people knew what was expected of them.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think the change management aspect of pretty much anything
Yeah.
bring forth that's new in your team. To your point, I think as leaders, we're always thinking like forward thinking, right? And you're always, okay, what can we improve? What can we optimize? What can we,
Mhm.
bring more efficiency to all, et cetera. And you're right. Most team members hate change. Like they don't like it.
Yeah.
They want to show up, they want to do great work, and they want to know why they're doing great work, but they also don't want to get out of a lot of times. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just people are wired differently,
Yeah.
and especially in over the last. At least this is what my experience has, and we're gonna get stuck in change management, but that's okay. I think it's an important conversation. Is especially over the last 5 or 6 years
Mhm.
with COVID and like companies doing even more risks or more changes than we've seen, previous to that. I think it makes people really uneasy. Okay, well, but
Sure.
what does that mean for my job? Am I going to lose my job?
Oh,
And
yeah.
with AI tools coming and all those sorts of things. So,
Absolutely.
um, yeah, I think that's really important that you said that. What as a leader, like, what is one of the things that you did to, one, sort of, like, reset your expectations mentally, but also then, like, help your team understand, "Hey, I'm with you. I'm gonna be patient with this, and this is where we're gonna get to."
Absolutely. To reset my expectations, I knew for the good of the group, we had to have conversations and we had to do it slowly. So if we didn't accomplish what we set forth to accomplish in a 1 hour meeting, oh well, we brought it to the next meeting and we carried on. It was
Mm,
important for that conversation to be had. I didn't just want to close the chapter and move on. And then for the team, I was just super transparent. I mean, I think it's scary, hey, we're bringing in an
mhm.
agency to improve our processes. It's about, oh boy.
Yes.
Oh,
What are they
boy.
gonna find?
What's going wrong? And
Yes.
it's not that at all. And so I was just really transparent. I said, hey, I recognize it could be scary, just calling it out and just saying, hey, look, if we bring in an agency and they're looking and peeking under the hood and saying, whoa, this looks broken, that's scary. And
Yeah.
I can empathize with that. But I wanted to reassure them there was nothing broken. We just want to be more efficient. We want to embrace different, we want to be more integrated. And so I think once they became familiar with Inverta and really understood that that trust was there, then
Hmm.
that conversation happened. But I just think being super, super transparent is like, I'm calling it out. Put all your cards on the table. This can be scary. It feels scary bringing
Yeah.
in an agent,
Yeah.
right? It's like in office
Yeah.
space, right? They bring in the consultants, and it's like it's scary. So I think just making sure it was a safe space for people to know, hey, this is just us really trying to improve.
Yeah.
And then once they had that trust within Inverta, I think we were pretty good to go.
That's great advice. Yeah. Thanks for that, Kelly. Okay. Talk a little bit about the outcomes. What have you experienced so far? I know you're still pretty early on in your journey, but what have you seen thus far, and how do you see it, the campaign planning process and framework propelling you into the future?
For sure. So right now we are also, in addition to campaign planning, we're embarking on MQA implementation as well. So
Mm.
we're starting to track what we're producing in terms of MQA. So with demand base, we're able to look through the different journey stages. And so we have seen a lot of our target accounts rapidly move through those different journey stages. So when they were aware to when they're engaged, to when they're qualified, and then become an MQA. So that's really warming us up and trying to get our mindset right to support an MQA process. So it's been nice to
Yes.
see conversion of those accounts. It's nice to see that we're reaching those accounts. It's also been incredibly validating. We've been producing a lot of different webinar pieces of content as well, or different webinars in general. We've had record signups for those webinars. And I'm sure it's not
Oh,
because
wow.
people have a free hour to watch a webinar, but I think it's because we really spent the time to nail down a message that resonated with our audience. So
Yes.
it wasn't a
Yes.
one hit wonder. We are now on our third webinar part of the series. Still high, really, really high numbers of folks that are engaging. And I think we all know
That's great.
webinars are really high value. And so it's been great to see those folks truly be interested in the topic. We've also just seen in general lots of content engagement, pipeline influence come from that content as well. So we talked a lot about creating different pieces of content. So now we have learnings to say, this one is outperforming this one. What can we do differently? We
Mhm.
also, we've seen some channel produce that hadn't in the past in terms of like organic social, which has been really nice to see. Again, the message I think really resonates with different folks. So that's been really positive. And then we're going to continue experimentation with companies like Intensify and really try to understand the intent model and how that's
Yeah.
getting people into our ecosystem. So from a result standpoint, our MQLs, we're still tracking MQLs. We'll have a dual funnel for quite some time. So our
Yeah.
MQLs are strong for coming from this campaign. We're also seeing a lot of those raw leads being nurtured into MQLs as well. So that's been positive. And then the enablement part of our business development team has been strong as well. We create a really great offer where they can go in at kind of this interactive piece. And so enabling our sales team with some of that to have those conversations with prospects has been great as well. So continuous optimization, but yeah, really just nice to see that our message landed in market and then we're going to continue
Yeah.
iterating on that.
Yeah. That's fantastic to hear, Kelly, and best of luck to you as you continue on that journey. I'm actually flying to a customer site this afternoon to go work on that MQA
All
planning,
right, I'll pick your brain
change
after.
management as well. Yeah, yeah. So that's a big thing happening now. So our last series of podcasts, our last two
Yeah,
episodes were
I
about
listened to
that
those. Those
same
were great.
same transition. Oh, awesome! Thank you. Okay, so I know we're running out of time. Um, if you are a marketer or a marketing leader listening to this, what's a piece of advice? What's the first thing they should go do? What should I be thinking about? Like, what are what is something you would advise them to go do? Like, what's your pro tip of the day, I suppose?
Well, for campaigns or just in general?
I would say for campaign planning.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's somebody having those same struggles you were, like, oh my gosh, that's me right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my team.
Talk to your team. I think ask questions, be
Mm,
curious. Go, I think sometimes as leaders too, we think we can pinpoint some of the challenges really easily because we're able to see a lot. Sometimes that's not
mm-hmm.
the challenge. It could be something else. So I think listen, and again, borrowing from what Inverta did in the beginning is just ask questions, really probe and don't stop with the surface level question, why? why, and keep getting like the five
Yes.
whys, right? We do a lot of that at Intelex as well. And why, and then you can kind of get to that root problem and ultimately fix what you need to make sure that things are running super efficiently and you're getting to really the cause and not just the surface layer. I think that's going to really help improve whatever it is you're trying to do, especially with campaign planning, is just get to that root cause.
Yeah, that's great. Good advice. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being a
Thank
guest
you.
today on the Rev Room. Best of luck with your ABM work and like moving into that MQA process. And yeah, thanks for just being such a great partner with Inverta. I
Likewise.
know that Kendra and Danielle and the team over there love working
Yes,
with you.
major shout out
So
to them. Yeah, they've been wonderful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Kelly. And yeah, appreciate you very
Awesome.
much.
Likewise. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rev Room today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. For more, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Don't forget to follow Inverta on LinkedIn for more updates and exclusive content. That's Inverta, INVERTA. Have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Reach out and let us know. Until next time, keep innovating and driving that revenue growth. See you next time.